I'm Yvette. My background right now, so I'm a receptionist, but I used to be an area manager in logistics. Um, and then my life before Christ. So I was a Catholic for 17 years of my life, and then I walked away for 11 years. Um, I walked away until I was 28 and then came back to Christ. And it was a very slow moving, gradual type thing. So, as somebody growing up in the Catholic faith, it was very like you had to play by the rule, right? So it was very strict. I come from a very like Hispanic type family where they're involved in church. You show up on Sunday, you had to be in your set like dressed for church. You couldn't be late. Like so it's very I don't know, it's very structured, I guess, and very strict. Though, like, I couldn't date anybody, and if I did date people, like, I'd be judged, and it was very which is fair. Now I understand it. But my parents, yeah, they were very, "You have to be to church. We're going to church this day. It's at this time. You have to be there, dressed." But I think growing up, um, as a Catholic, I don't know, it's very different than Christianity in the way that, like, some of the beliefs are different, but, like, it's the same, they believe in the same God. Yeah, so the foundation was, like, there was God, right? And the foundation was, like, you had to believe him, and the foundation was you had to follow the rule or you were gonna go to hell type of deal, like, it was very strict that way. And so I always had that belief, like, I followed my parents, I was like, "Okay, there's God." And I'm going to follow this principle and I'm not going to break any rules and I'm going to try to not break any rules. And, all of the promises that I keep to God, like I need to keep to God. And it was very strict. And I think that was actually part of why I left is because, um, and I'll let you ask the question or I could just answer it now is like just leaving. So, when I was 17, I ended up being in this car accident and somebody lost their life, right? And I was in a really bad relationship at that time too. So it was like a mix, like the perfect mixture of things. And I said, if there's a God, why is this happening? Right? So if there is a God, why is this happening? And same thing with my mom too. Like, and I don't want to out my mom. Love my mom. I love my mom. Mom, if you ever see this, I love you so much and I'm so grateful for you. But growing up, like I saw my parents were so mean to me. And it was just always like, and now as a parent, I can understand, sometimes like our words mean a lot, but I feel like they were mean, but they followed God. And I was like, if this is the God that they're serving and like we're not supposed to break rules, I don't want to follow him anymore because he nothing is changing. Like my life isn't getting any easier. Somebody just died, and I don't want to follow it anymore. And so yeah, I walked away from my faith as a Catholic when I was 17.
Wow. So, you said you had this big question for God, like basically like, God, are you real? Um, hey, I had the same exact question for God, man. And God immediately, I was gently rebuked. So maybe we can talk about, if that was similar in your case. Um, dang it. Okay, so question for you. That does make me ask, and I don't want to forget other questions, but when you had that question for God, right? A, how old were you? Just out of curiosity.
I was 17.
17. And did you get an immediate response from God?
I don't I can't tell you that I remember because if he did, I wasn't listening because I it took me 11 years to come back.
Understood. And so if you don't mind, so, take me down this road. Um, you like, you leave behind maybe Catholicism and then you end up years later, submitting your life under Jesus Christ as a Christian, right? Um, what was that like? Where did that start? What where did that come from?
Oh my gosh, is this road, and I didn't realize then what I realize now. So when I left, I was in that car accident and I had followed, I went through all the courts because it ended up being my fault. Um, and so I had to go to all the court dates and everything like that. And at the last one, his family, after giving an apology, his family had got up and they were like, Yvette, we forgive you. Now it's time to forgive yourself. And I didn't realize that a long time ago, but that's kind of where it all happened. And I didn't think about that moment any more than that moment. So I'm going through life. I'm with the boys' dad because I have three boys that belong to the relationship that I was in for 8 years. And so I have my first son when I was 20, and then my second son when I was 21, and then my last son, I think, when I was 24. Um, and I was 5 months pregnant when I left their dad, because I had found female hormones in his bathroom, and so he was wanting to transition to be a woman. Um, so I actually left. That was the day I was like, "I have to go?" So I end up having to be bedridden. So I'm bedridden at 5 months pregnant because now I'm, you know, n not like, it's more of a, I can't even think of it. It's becoming of, like, uh, I don't even know the word. Like, it's a health risk, I guess you should say, if I was up and walking and stuff because I could have him early because 'cause I've had my other sons early too. Um So I get to sit in that hospital bed, that hospital room for like a month and a half, just thinking about how, well, once I get out of here, my life is changed, like completely changed. And so I have my last son from that relationship, and he is early. All my other boys are early too. And I come home and I'm there for the home that we had shared. I was there for like a week after I had my last son, and I packed up all of my things and I left. And my son was on oxygen. Like, we moved into my parents' house, and my parents' house was already full. So they had a 5-bedroom home and it had my grandparents, which was two, my cousin, his daughter, me, my uncle, my aunt, my 3 kids. So there was 10 people in a 5-bedroom house. I don't know if I included my parents in that count, maybe 12. Um, so it was all of us, and it was just me sharing a bedroom with my 3 kids, and, like, my I had books and, like, I had all this stuff from, like a table and everything, and so I was so grateful for my mom because she literally just my parents really just brought me in. And, I started to work full time. I ended up getting a part-time job, and I promoted 2 months after that, and then promoted 7 months after that to a higher position, and then a year after that to even higher position. And I ended up being able to afford my own apartment, and I met my husband now, in all of that too. And, he never lived on his own, I never lived on my own, so we ended up getting our own places, and I had my own two-bedroom apartment that I bought or that I was paying for, and then I had paid off my car, I was at a high-paying position, like, everything was going well. Um, and it was at another location. It was at the location that I had promoted to originally. One of my coworkers, we were sitting having a conversation, and he was talking about God, and I was like, "I'm an ominist. I don't believe what you believe." And omonism is like a person who respects all the religions, that they all kind of point to the same thing, right? So it's the universe or, some energy or God or whatever, what have you. That's what I believed. And my coworker was like, "No, Yvette, it's God." And I was like, "You could keep your God. I don't want it. I've already tried it. It didn't work for me. So you could keep it over there." And I was at a point in my life because I was lifting so much. So I was like powerlifting and I was exercising and I was like, I'm gonna work on keeping my word because I broke my word all the time. So like plans that I had made to other people, I would break it. Um, so he was like, "Yvette, just come to church with me." And I said, "No, I don't want to go to church with you because I don't believe in the God that you believe in. Like you could keep your God." And he said, "No, Yvette, like, you really need to come to church." And I said, "Okay." I don't know what made me say okay. And I said, "Okay." Um, and I actually, the day that I was supposed to go to church, I was about to call him to tell him, "Hey, I'm not coming." And he calls me like right before I make that phone call. And he goes, "Hey, Vet, are you still coming? Me and my wife are waiting for you." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm on my way." End up going. And I don't even remember what the sermon was. I don't remember anything about that. I just remember that I wanted to keep going because something changed. And so, um, at my apartment too, I had a cleaning lady, um, and she would come in and clean my apartment once a month, like do all the deep cleaning because I'm not a very good cleaner. I am now. I wasn't then. um, So then I didn't realize because I told her, "Hey, I went to church, and all this stuff." And she said that she like threw her hands up because she was so happy. I guess she had been praying over my apartment the whole time that she was cleaning it. And it caught me off guard because I was like, well, I was going through all of that without God, for those years. I was starting to get into like witchcraft. I was doing tarot cards. I had 2 decks of tarot cards. I went to psychics. A psychic actually told me that my husband now is the like he drains me like my job had drained me at the time and that it was going to continue to be like that my whole life. And it's crazy because my husband is not like that at all. He actually fills me more than he drains me. And I was like, wow, of course Satan would do that, right? Because that's my husband. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the start of it, I guess.
Yeah, this is so relatable. You know why I say that, right? Because my testimony deals with psychics. Um, we'll have a conversation after your mini. Um, but you know what? I do have I want to clarify. You mentioned that your coworker basically was persistent in asking you to go to church with him and you kept refusing. And then you also mentioned the cleaning lady, right? She was praying over you, praying over your apartment. I'm curious to know if you ever found out from either one of them, what did they notice in you at the time that kept prompting them to either pray for you or ask you to go to church? Because you had maybe your blinders on, right? And sometimes God will place people in our lives to show us our blind spots, right? So I wonder what, especially your coworker who kept prompting you, right? Come to church. Please come to church. Did he ever let you know what he saw in you that kept pushing him to ask you?
No, he never mentioned anything like that. I just know that like and it's crazy because I didn't even get along with his coworker at the beginning because we had launched this facility together and I was somebody else's assistant and he was the manager on the other team and like we didn't even like each other. Like, I thought he wasn't a good manager, you know, I didn't think anything highly of him. Um, but after the encounter, I still sometimes text him now, like, "Hey, I just wanna say thank you. Like, you changed my like, God used you to change my whole life." And it was really that instance that started that trajectory because it would have never happened. It would have never happened. I was at a point in my life, and I will say this is like, you know, when they say, "Oh, yeah, manifesting works," like, yes, yes, it does. I know because I was doing it, but it's also a form of witchcraft. And it's actually like, and I didn't know that until after I had, you know, started leaving those pieces behind, is like really starting to understand what it was. And it was like, I was manifesting. Like I tell people this all the time. It's like, I was investing in cryptocurrency and I had like a $900 investment and I got $20,000. When I first moved into my mom's house, we went to Disneyland and I had $123 in my bank account to spend on 3 kids, you know, like, that was it. I didn't have anything. So when I started manifesting, like, I am rich, I am rich, I am ri it started to happen, and I was able to take my kids to Disneyland with $10,000 in my bank account, you know what I'm saying? And so it was working. But what I didn't realize is, of course it would work, right? Of course that would work because if Satan wants to keep those blinders on you, like, why would you need God then? Like, for what if you're bringing it to yourself? Like, for what? Why would you need God? So, for your question, as far as answering, like, is there something that they saw in me? So, so the woman who was cleaning my apartment, she saw my tarot card. She saw because they had opened a crystal shop down the street. So she had saw all of these things inside of my house, like because I still wasn't a believer then. I became a believer like like a year and a half after I was there. Um And so she had just said, like, "I saw your crystals and I saw your tarot cards." And she goes, "And I just started praying throughout your apartment over these spaces," which I appreciate her for doing because, you know, I feel like all of that was relative. Like all of the way, and I appreciate this so much about God is like knowing that like, there is no coincidences with God. So those 2 things that just happened all of a sudden, like, that I well, not those 2 things, but it was just, like, a bunch of things that happened, like, so suddenly that I was at a point in my life where I kept my promises, where I had met a coworker that I didn't get along with, but I respected, you know, and they're the ones who took me to church, and then, um that, you know, the woman that was cleaning my house that we actually became friends after that, and when me and my husband moved into our house that we're in now, she actually came over and we were talking about God, and that's when she told me, it's like, "That I was praying over your apartment the entire time that you were there." And I was like, "Ah, thank the Lord," you know? And it was just a mixture of all of these good things, and so I think that they had saw not necessarily like me crying for God, but they saw a broken person that needed God. And he persisted because he knew that, and I think that's the beautiful thing about people who are open to seeing God is like people who know God will persist because we know those people are open to seeking God, and maybe that's why he persisted, is that he saw it in me that I might be open to that opportunity. And I don't know, I can't tell you what it was, but I'm grateful that he did.
And you know, that also just you connecting the dots and saying, like, I don't know if it was before or after he was inviting you to church, you're a coworker, right? But I believe God was softening your heart before for this, right? To come into relationship with him. Um and it was a gentle leading you, right? Like you made the decision, you said, "Oh, for some reason I want to start keeping my word," right?
Mhm.
And I don't know if you were always obedient with that, but for your coworker to invite you to church, which was something you didn't fully accept, right? But because you had made that promise that I wanna start doing what I say at least I'm gonna do. Like that is that also just that just says and talks a lot about or says a lot about just how God is so intentional with us, right? And he's so strategic. Um, I consider God the master orchestrator. Ugh, it's just so beautiful and to even have these relationships, right, that you still have with them after the fact is a testament of again just God's persistent in your life, God's goodness, right? Um I want to ask too, um what was your I don't know if you met your husband. I don't know what time you met your husband or when you met him, but at what season did you meet him? And was he a believer? And not mm,
The season that I met my husband, I was I was lost. So a lot of my identity was tied to my ex. So I was super codependent on the boys' dad. So a lot of the things that I knew of myself were only things that I knew of us together or like me with him. So when I left him, I didn't know anything about myself. Like, I didn't know what I liked to eat. I didn't know what I liked as a favorite candy bar. I didn't know I couldn't even go to the store by myself, you know? But all of these things I had to learn quickly, because I had 3 kids and they still needed to get fed and things still needed to keep going because they still needed to be taken care of. And, so I was in a season of loss, like, really lost, like, I didn't know anything, like, I didn't know who I was, and you know, I think that's a lot of what our issues are today is, like, we become so lost in, like, knowing who we are, like, who God created us to be, and so I was just trying to fill myself, like, I was just trying to find something, like, I was just trying to find me. I did a lot of things, and, I was on a dating app and I have a logistical mind. Like I like to make processes out of things and I like to make them efficient. So, dating app, usually you use it to just, swipe on a couple of people to and hopefully find a date, right? I had a problem. So my problem is I was already what, 24, and I hadn't experienced a lot of life, like, you know? So, like, I experienced life, like, with kids and life, like, married, but I didn't know who I was. And, like, sometimes you find yourself by doing things or, like, experiencing life, like, "Oh, I like sushi," because I had the opportunity to taste sushi, right? So it was like that, and so my brain was like, I've never experienced a lot of things in my life, so how do I know what I even like? So, saw a dating app and I was like, okay, I'm gonna put a list of things that I want to do. And I'm gonna swipe right on literally every single person. And if it works, it works, right? So it did work. And I met a lot of cool people. I did a lot of cool things. Um, and that's where I met my husband. My husband added me on Snapchat, and one day he was just like, "Hey, happy birthday." And I'm like, "Who is this? Like, who are you? Like, how are you just gonna remember my birthday like that?" Like, it was just weird. And so he was like, "Hey, I'm Tony. Like, I saw you on Tinder, followed you to Snapchat." And we ended up having lunch together. He wasn't really my type, so I was like, "Oh, it was cool. It was a great lunch, you know." We went to a bookstore and that was it. And we actually started hanging out more. So we ended up going like hiking and stuff and um the world demanded, I don't want to say the world, and I'm going to say the world because the world means people were asking a lot of me. Um so it was like my weekends were full, so the boys would go with their real dad on the weekends and they would just fill up. My weekends were always so full and I was like, I just want to slow down. Like I just want to I remember being in my apartment cuz me and my husband had already started talking and like we're just friends and like really like taking our time. I was taking my time and um I remember being in my apartment and I was like, I just want to slow down. Like I don't care who I upset. I don't care who gets mad at me. I just need to be with Yvette now, like I just need to be by myself. And so I started to reserve my weekends for just me. Like if I wanted every Friday I had this thing of I would always take myself to dinner. So I'd always sit by the like at a table by myself and stuff. And it was funny because I would, like, take a picture of, like, the other side of the table and, like, draw a little stick figure, and I'd say, like, "Hey, I'm with my boyfriend," you know? And my husband, again, he followed me on Snapchat, he would see this, and then he would be like, "Hey, can I meet you there?" He never was like, "You have to meet with me today or we need to go on a date," and he was working. Like, this man worked. I don't even know how he did it, but he would get up at, like, 4 in the morning, text me before he went to work, and then, like, text me, like, last text message at 1 o'clock in the morning, like, that he was at work. So he was always working, and I was like, How is this man making time for me, like, to still come eat with me, not forcing me out of my schedule, never forced me to, like, put him before my kids, never, and that's what it was. That's a lot of what it was. And so what turned into slow dating, like, we just started to see each other more, and I had an interview with the police department. I failed, by the way. I felt super guilty for smoking weed when I was, like, 18 or, like, 12 or something, and I couldn't get over it, I guess. Because they were like, "Did you lie? Have you ever smoked?" And I was like, "Yes, I did. I'm so sorry." Like, I felt super guilty for that. But, he met me after that, kind of consoled me after, and I asked him, I was like, "Hey, do you wanna just start dating?" And he goes like, "What, like, be my girlfriend?" And I was just like, "Sure." And my husband is he's gonna be 36 this year, and so we met when I was 28. Um, and so I asked him, to date me, and he had already been single for 10 years. Um, so when we met, we were just like, "This is weird," and then, our relationship started really rough because, like, my parents didn't really set a good example for marriage, and his parents kinda were the same. So we ups and downs, and, like, his friends were like, "Dude, you need to, like, leave." Probably were saying, "Dude, you need to leave her," which I don't blame them because we were both, it was almost like being young, still with that mentality, and then being in a relationship as adults, and that was really hard. Um, Fast forward, we end up so I end up getting pregnant, and I told him, I was like, "I don't know if this is," and I didn't know actually, so never mind, forget that. I didn't know, but, um, the water heater in my apartment went out, and he lived down the street from my job. So I called him and I was like, "Hey, I need to get ready for work. I need to come over, take a shower." And while I was there, we had pregnancy tests. And so I took one and it came back positive. And I was like, "Dude, we're not even married." Like, but I didn't think about that. So I didn't think that, hey, we're not even married. But I was just like, we're pregnant and we haven't even been talking for a week. Like we weren't even together, you know? And, I get dressed, go to work. I come back and I was like, we're going to talk about this. We decide that we're going to stay together and have a baby, and if we're not like, if we're not working, at least we'll still have a baby, right? And so we were like, it's fine. Baby's born, and I'm starting to feel convicted because, activities still happen. And I'm like, I can't keep doing this. Like, the Lord says we have to be married, and we can't keep doing this. We can't keep peddling in things because I don't want to do this anymore. Like, so baby comes on the 2nd, and we're married by the 14th. And so we go to the courthouse, we get married, and then it didn't make every all of the problems go away. We're still having problems. Oh man, if anything, it made it worse because now it's like, give me the divorce papers, Like, I want a divorce right now. Like, go away from me. Get behind me, Satan, It's those types of things. And then it was one day we were just chilling, and I was like, you know, you're gonna be my walking testimony of my life. Like, you're gonna be the person that can witness God changing my life. Like, you're the one who's gonna be speaking on that for the rest of my life. And I was like, and I just want you to know, like, you're my best friend and I love you so much. And like, I have your back until the very end. And he said almost like the same thing back to me, and it changed our whole life. Like, it changed the way we see each other. It changed, like, because I feel like we're always anticipating, like, one of us to leave, like, or one of us to, like, say, hey, let's get those divorce papers, or we're always anticipating, like, just separating because we've always just separated. But to actually be like, no, we're here, we're in this together. Our marriage honors God and it's centered around God, and, like, I have your back, you have mine, and we're gonna be witnesses to each other's lives and, like, show the goodness of God through our marriage and honor God through our marriage. It's changed everything. Like, we've become slow to anger. We've been, like, really slow with our words. We've been listening to each other. Um, we've been healing for each other in places that, I've never witnessed before in any and it shows, and, like, I don't wanna take credit for any anything around us because God changes the things around us. Like, God is through us, and, like, I've seen my mom change, like, even from who she used to be and, like, starting to, like, depend on my dad and, like, really starting to honor him in that way, and, like, it's just changing, and I think it's so beautiful, and my mom is changing as a person, like, from who she used to be to, like, now, and it's almost like I can't explain it. It's almost like here it is, and it's like a catalyst. It just starts like a ripple effect, and it just very gradually just starts going into all of these different areas and, like, it's starting to make the soil really rich? So, yeah.
This is really this is God is this is why I wanted to do this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because you know what God has done for you, right? But to be able to see just the goodness of God elsewhere, it's just reaffirming, God, you are real, right? And it's this thing of as we submit to him, right? As we submit our life to him, we begin to change. Like the word of God says, you cannot and this is something maybe you can pray with me about, but to bear good fruit, right, you have to abide in him. You have to remain in him. You cannot work to get the fruits on your own. You have to abide, you have to be submitted. And once the fruit starts to grow, you notice that the fruit on the other branches is also impacted, right? We are only branches. And so just hearing you say, how you first made a decision, you didn't even maybe fully consider God when your coworker was asking you to go to church, but that was you coming under the will of God. And he has literally taken you and impacted those around you.
Well, and it's crazy, sorry, and I didn't answer this question, but the way that it impacted my husband. So my husband wasn't a believer when we met. Like, he was actually a Buddhist. So we would go to like the monks and like the temple and stuff, and like we would sit and they would be praying and chanting to the monks and stuff. And what caught him off guard, and I'll let this be part of his testimony if he ever shares it, but is one time I looked at him and I was just like, I just want you to know. And I wasn't even in my faith like that yet. But I told him, I was like, I just want you to know, like, if it ever comes between God or you, I'm gonna choose God. So don't ever make that a decision for me, like a choice, because I will not choose you. And I looked at him dead in the eyes, and he'll use that as part of his testimony now, because that's actually what moved him to seek God. And my husband wakes up early in the morning now to read his Bible, to pray, prays over my kids. Like, he is the most God-fearing man and such a good example to the children of like what that's supposed to look like. Yeah, we all fail, but like my husband is really like one of those people that God used. Like that was part of that ripple effect, you know? And I think it's so beautiful.
That is beautiful. And I'm curious to know, so earlier in the interview, right, you mentioned you contacted a psychic regarding your husband, and the psychic told you that your husband would be draining to you. I'm curious to know what would cause you to contact the psychic. Like, first off, did God rebuke you before, like when you first started contacting psychics, or did the rebuke come after you contacted the psychic about your husband? And also, what caused you to seek the psychic about your husband?
So honestly, it wasn't even um it was me. So they have this fair here, like, and it's a gathering of people that are psychics and stuff. And I would go there all the time. I would go there once a year, and I had told my husband, I was like, "Hey," and this is when we were just dating. I was like, "Hey, they're having this thing. I kind of want to go." So I went up to this woman, and she was just it's like, "Yeah, it's your this relationship that you're in is draining you. Like your job is draining you." And like I don't even think I asked her about, him or anything. I think she just said it. And so I thought about that, because those are those seeds that Satan plants in your mind. And so every time we got in a fight, it was always back to that psychic and what she said. Like, you're draining me. Like, you're gonna drain me. You're gonna drain me for the rest of my life. And then when I really was into like God and like seeing how the opposition works. So that's how my brain works, is like I look at the opposition. And the way in my mind that I understood it is God has an opponent, and his opponent has been here for years, thousands and thousands of years. And he has built processes to which he could lead people astray. And when there was something that I watched where it says, like, Satan clings onto your words. He could see, like, demons see your words, like, spiritually. They could see you talking. They're specifically assigned to you to trick you, to turn you from God. Like, that's their assignment here on earth. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, so these people who are psychics, I felt like are just how people can speak in tongues, or just how people could get visions or could see things or can do prophecy. Like, these people could, like, Satan could use them too as vessels, right? So why can't he just be inside of somebody and say, "Hey, tell this to this girl?" And to me, it was like, of course Satan would do that because my marriage would bring God glory. So why would he want me to get married to this man who's going to later bring God glory and to raise people up in Christ, like to raise their children up in Christ? Why? For what? So of course he's going to say, "Hey, this man is going to drain you," because it would have split us apart.
And that also is a very good thing. So it's what God intended for one thing, the enemy flips it on its head and does the exact opposite. Um, and so this is a really good segue into the next question I have for you. Can you explain why you think it's important to have a relationship with God?
Yeah, I think it's important because I think, let me put it this way. God created us because he loves us. And, and it's important because I think people need to understand that through all of your failures, through all of the times that you felt alone, through every heartache, through every pain or ache that you've ever felt, you have to know that somebody loves you so much, as if you were the only person to exist in the whole entire universe. And that's how he created it to be. And I think that people get it wrong because we as people get it wrong, right? In explaining it, or in the way that we see it, or we let other people speak for us. But what stood out to me as somebody who has looked into, like, philosophy and energy and, manifesting and witchcraft, like, as somebody who's dabbled in a lot of different things, when I read the Bible for the first time and started to understand it, I've never read something that's more true, not because somebody said it to me, but because I read it for the first time. And there was one scripture that really solidified it for me in my search at the very beginning. And it's Jeremiah 29:13. And it says, let me see here. It says, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." And I realized when I was first a Catholic is that I wasn't seeking God because I wanted to in my heart. It was because somebody was telling me to seek him. And the things of my heart that what my heart wanted, I was finding were leaving me feeling empty. So, as a last shot for myself, as a last resort, I said, "Okay, I'm going to take this as my, like, insurance, if you will, or my reassurance, if you will. You say if I search for you with all my heart, that I'm going to find you. So I'm going to go on this. on the search. And the worst thing that can happen is I don't find him and I'm just as lonely as I was before. But if I do find him, like, then what? Then life has to change, right? Because he has rules and he has structure. But when you realize who he is, you start to realize that his rules aren't there to keep you from um, doing things. His rules are there to protect you. And I just want anybody to know that if you're on the fence and if you're teetering on that fence of maybe I should or maybe I shouldn't, it's not going to happen overnight. God didn't like it wasn't like I went to church and I threw away my tarot cards. I was still doing tarot. I ended up getting baptized, rebaptized, and I was still doing tarot. But it was until I started to love God for who he is because he loves me that I didn't want to cause him pain anymore. Is when I decided to change. But he showed me that. So it's not in a condemning way like your parents would have done it, or if your parents were condemning. It's not like you do this or else, or do this or else I'm going to stop talking to you type of thing. It was a follow me, come with me. He says, like, what is it? It's Matthew something where he talks about his yoke. His yoke is easy and his burden is light. Like, take my yoke upon you. So I want to say that is like, go towards him if you feel like you're missing something, because you have nothing to lose, but you have everything to gain, and he'll change your life. He'll change the way you see things. Even now, he's still refining me. It's never an ending process. I just got refined yesterday. It's like, and I left, like, even with my job and leaving my job, it was just always a continual refinement. Like, I had to be humbled in order to seek him, in order to be changed, and it was hard. So if you find yourself alone, and if you find yourself looking for something, turn to him and let him change you. And it's going to be hard, and you're going to give up things that you don't want to give up. But it's not because he's making you, but it's because the things that you are into, the sin that you are into, is making you feel this way. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Yvette.
Yeah.